Testing. 1, 2, 3. Across the breadth of time and space, teeth like silver, a gleaming face. Beware this creature, it quickens its pace. If you want to learn to escape its path, then listen to Backlook Cinema, the podcast. My name is Zoe the Warlock. It's spelled Z-O or Z-O for those of you outside of the U.S. It's the 122nd episode. Thank you for downloading and streaming. We really appreciate it. We watch movies that I love when I was growing up in the 1900s. I talk about my favorite parts with a special guest, and I'll share a little bit of trivia along the way. If you like what you're about to hear, then tell your family, tell your friends, and tell the chaperone to the trick-or-treat or the trick-or-treaters, and tell that special advisor to the military about Backlook Cinema, the podcast. Now, I don't know if I mentioned it last week who our guest is going to be, but she's a return guest. She has pulled my bacon out of the fire because, when you have guests line up and then something happens and, life happens, life gets in the way. So I put a shout out to all my friends and family out there in the podcast verse. And I had many come back to me, but the first person to come back to me and said that she was able to do the show is the one that I'm about to introduce to you now. I want to introduce you to a person who has a podcast where she dives into the scams and schemers and those ne'er-do-wells. She offers proper criticism of people that are trying to take your money. Watch out for scams, y'all. And here to help you, we're watching out for the scams, is my guest, Sunni Hepburn.
Oh my goodness.
How you doing, Sunni? How you feeling tonight?
I am well. I'm so happy to be back. Thank you for that introduction. This is so fun already. I'm already excited. I'm already excited here. Yes, thank you for bringing back the Book of Lies to your podcast. Awesome.
Definitely. I'm glad to have you back. And I really want to get into it. I really want to ask you, because I see you're on Instagram. I'm trying to remember. There's so many social media out there.
So many.
I'm trying to keep up with them all. So I've seen you on Instagram living your best life. So I have to ask you, what have you been up to? I know, I don't know if it was you or Sunni that's a member of the school board. Who is a member of the school board?
I am on the school board. I am Sunni, me.
So
yes.
Being on the school board, how is that experience?
Wow. Well, everybody knows your name, and then you don't realize they know you. Or you're like, people come and talk to you like, oh, hey, what's up? And then they want to complain about like teachers and things that are going on in the school district or just in general. People really just want to be heard. So I'm there to really lend a sympathetic ear, hear what they have to say, and then point them into the right direction for a resolution. I'm like a mama. I'm the mama of the school district. I'm like, come on, talk to mama. I'll help you out. So yes, that is me. I'm on the school board. I'm also an active realtor in California. So I'm selling real estate. Still in it, still in the game. Still making my dog biscuits, Beauty's biscuits. So and you ordered some from me as well, didn't you, Zoe? Thank you.
I sure did.
And I think your offer code is still good too. So you could still use that offer code Backlook.
Awesome.
But I make pumpkin dog biscuits. Beauty's Biscuits is my business. That's also my website. And that's going well as well. So I'm staying busy. And it's soccer season. So I'm assistant coaching my daughter's soccer team. And I was officiating. I'm a ref. So I was officiating a game this morning. Then we had a game. And then it's just crazy right now. I stay busy, but I always have time for you, Zoe.
Oh my God, you're so busy. Once again, thank you for coming on. Also,
yes, thank you.
That thing with the, you said that being on the school board is like everybody knows your name. So it's kind of like Cheers, except when you go to Cheers, you go to relieve stress. And then when you go to the school board, you're actually kind of taking on stress.
That is exactly right. You go to Cheers, you get a beer. you go to the school board, they're like, here's some water and snacks. So, I'll take them both. I love snacks. I like water, but I like beer too. So,
Absolutely. So also, I saw in one of your posts, you had like a stand for Beauty's Biscuits. You were at a fair or an event or something. Tell us about that.
Yes. So I was at a music festival recently, and I set up my booth. I come in, I pop up, I bring in my tables, my rugs, just make it nice and fancy so people want to come in and talk to me. And I got to meet some great people. I'm now at the event space that I was at. The owners were interested in offering some of my biscuits in their store, like consignment. So I've got some biscuits in a shop somewhere on Pear Blossom. But it was a good time. I got to talk to some people, meet some people, hang out with some artists, listen to some music. So it was a good time. I love doing pop-up events. It's fun. It's like a different type of high.
Yeah.
You're talking to people, you get excited, you get to tell them about your passion or what you're doing. And it's always a great day.
It looked awesome. You really went all out because that booth you had, it really did look fancy. You look all professional and stuff.
I gotta bring it. Gotta bring them to the table. And then once I have them at the table, then I'm like, tell me about your dog. That's like my first question. Tell me about your dog.
Right.
Tell me, is it old? Is it young? Is it big? Is it small? Talk to me about your dog. And then I'll make a suggestion as to what type of treat might, meet their fancy.
That's awesome. You know how you target the dogs. You hit them right in the heart. You get them right
there,
right in the heart,
in the gut, right in the pocket.
That's pretty awesome. So I don't think I asked you this before. This is about the Beauty's Biscuits in particular. So do they need to be refrigerated, or can they last a long time, or how does that work out?
Well, this is a very good question. They are made with pumpkin. So I just say to be safe, put them in the refrigerator. I bake them. I dehydrate them. I have like a moisture absorption thing in the bag. But just to be on the safe side, just keep them in the fridge, just because there's no preservatives. I put no preservatives in them, no additives, nothing strange that your dogs don't need. But I, initially started making them for my dog, Beauty. That's who she is. She's 15 now. And I just wanted to give her a treat that she could enjoy that wouldn't make her sick. And as I've been making dog biscuits for a good amount of years, I've been developing different recipes. As she's now a senior dog, she's 15.
Yeah.
So now I have different, recipes with CBD and turmeric to help with inflammation, joint pain, things of that nature. So I'm learning as I go along. Dog biscuits made by dog moms.
Yeah. So tell our audience again what type of dog Beauty is.
She's a black lab shepherd mix. So I rescued her at okay, I'll tell you about me. So before I moved back home, I used to live up in the Bay Area of California. So I used to live in Oakland. And when I moved back to my town, I wanted a dog. I was like, I want a friend. I need a companion. So I drove down to the shelter to see like what I could find. And someone had dropped off a litter of puppies. And so I picked her up. I put her in my hand and I was like, it's you. You're going to be my best friend forever. And she was all black. So I was like, I'm going to name you Black Beauty. You're going to be Beauty. That's why I named her. And then shortly after I got my dog, then I got pregnant with my oldest child who's 14. And golly gee, just let's pray on that. But yeah, I mean, you could put them in the refrigerator. They're usually fine, but I would just put them in the refrigerator just to be safe. So I do put on the label to store in the refrigerator, just so there's no spoilage, because pumpkin's kind of funny.
Right. Yeah, you got to watch out.
But it's good for their digestion, yeah.
You got to watch out for pumpkins. So this being a movie podcast, have you seen any movies lately besides the one we're going to talk about?
What have I seen lately? What? I've been watching a lot of Disney Plus. So I feel like the last movie I could say that I've watched was live action Little Mermaid.
I've been planning on watching that one.
You haven't watched it yet?
No, I hadn't got around to
It's
it.
pretty good. Do you have Disney Plus?
Yes, I'm so far behind on everything. I think the last movie I watched was Gunpowder Milkshake. I think that's what it's called. That's on Netflix.
Ah, yes.
And I watched it because it had some of my favorite people in it. So I was like, well, it has to be good. And it wasn't as good as I hoped it would be. But I still...
It was okay. It was decent. I enjoyed that one as well.
Right. But I still like watching like Angela Bassett and what's her name? I can't remember. Was that Michelle Yeoh in there?
Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah. I enjoy watching her and the new girl from Guardians of the Galaxy whose name escapes me.
Yeah, I can't think of her name either. I know she has red hair. And she was also in I was going to say Jungle Book, Jumanji.
Yeah, Jumanji. Right. I can't. I'll remember it later, right after the podcast ends.
To the Googles. Where's my phone? It's charging. But yeah, I did enjoy that movie as well. But I mean, if you saw, back to what I was talking about, animated Little Mermaid, it's pretty much the same, the live action, except there's more songs.
Right. Well, that's what I like about some of the live action. Like, I enjoyed Aladdin. I think that and The Jungle King were the only ones that I've seen so far. But I liked some of the extra songs in Aladdin, and that was fun. So I'm trying to think of the song that I liked so much, but nope, it wasn't called Frozen. Silent. It was like Silent or Quiet or...
The Princess Jasmine song?
Yeah, the Princess Jasmine song. I really like that one. That was pretty awesome.
I did like that. There's an extra song in The Little Mermaid, and it's Prince Eric singing, and I was just like, why do you need a song? But I guess I was being kind of rude. Just like, really? Prince Eric has a song? All right, let's go. But
they're trying
he can hold the tune.
They're trying to build his character.
I guess they were, but I was like, really? Is this necessary?
Right. That's what a lot of people, I've heard that from a lot of people. There's like, this is not about Prince Eric. He's just a prop.
It's not about you.
I was going to say something rude, but I'm not going to feed my inner demons right now. So do you play games at all, or is that not one of your hobbies?
I don't have time. Yeah. I play solitaire on my phone.
Right.
I really don't. Honestly, I don't have time to play games. I used to, but then I realized, hey, they're sucking up all my time.
Yeah.
I just can't do that. So I don't game. I don't do any of that. I just play solitaire.
Right. I know exactly what you mean. I was just playing a little bit of games before we started, but but as it turns out, I really don't have time for it, but I force myself to do it anyway, or I'm drawn to it anyway. Like, there are other things that I'm supposed to be doing. And I was like,
exactly.
Well, before I do this thing that I have to do, I'm going to go and play a game. And then 5 hours later, I was like, okay, let me go ahead and do that thing that I was supposed to do.
What game were you playing?
Well, no, not this particular game. I was able to stop myself. So, but any game that I'm really into, like the last game that I just finished was Spider-Man Miles Morales, that came out, I guess, last year or 2 years ago. And that's a great game. It's not even a full game. It's like a quarter of a game. And I played that, and that was fun. And then this morning I started God of War, but it's the God of War that came out a couple of years ago for PlayStation 4. And that's emotionally grappling, right? Because in there's a character, and he is formerly the God of War, and he has a son, and sometimes he feels really mean to his son. And then at other times you understand why, because he's like mean, but then he has moments of tenderness, right? So
I'm mean for a reason.
Right. That's exactly right. So that's going to be an interesting game to play, as I'm playing it now. But it's just I don't want to call it a time suck because it's one of my favorite hobbies, but it can get away from
It
you
is.
if you let
It is. Yeah. I mean, when I was young, when I was a kid, I used to have like, I had the Nintendo GameCube,
Right,
and
right.
I would just I would come home and play video games and like play video games for hours and hours. And then when you're young, you have nothing to do. Like by that, I mean, you're not cooking dinner, you're not cleaning, you're not doing chores, you're not taking care of the kids, you're not feeding the dogs, you're not gardening. You got all kinds of time on your hands. That is a luxury I do not have anymore. It's time.
Right. That's exactly right. We got to engage in adulting, and as it turns out,
sadly,
adulting takes up a lot of time. Like I was going to do some chores around the house. I was like, you know what? I'm either going to save it for tomorrow or next week, because now I'm doing the podcast like every other week. So next weekend is free. So maybe I'll handle that next weekend. Delay it until later. Right. So I'm gonna go ahead and pivot to you telling us how our listeners can reach you, your websites, your publications. What's going on?
All the things. So you can listen to my podcast where I talk fraud, scams, liars, cheats, and thieves with my sister, Book of Lies podcast. We're on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. I'm still calling it Twitter because who changes a name like that? But whatever. Book of Lies Pod. On Instagram or Facebook, it's Book of Lies Podcast. We also have a website, bookofliespodcast.com. So you can connect with us there. We're on all the streaming platforms. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, you can listen to us on that same platform. What else? Yes. So that's where you can find me. If you want to learn more about my dog biscuits, you can go to beautiesbiscuits.com, and it's Beauties Biscuits on all the platforms as well. And you can usually find me lurking somewhere on one of those pages.
Right. Did you open a Thread account also?
No.
Oh, okay. I mean, technically, it's already there. It's like
it's Instagram, right? Like, stop it. There's too many things.
Yeah, it is definitely too many things. But like, you know how you at somebody on a social media platform. So if you at somebody on Threads and they're on Instagram, but they're not on Threads, it's still highlighted. So, so I don't know if the people get a notification.
Is it a separate app? Is it a separate app, or you have to go into, you have to get to Threads via Instagram?
It's a separate app. So, if you're on Instagram, there's like, if you go into the settings, you can set up your Threads account through Instagram, or you can just download the Threads app and do it that way.
What happens on there? Like, what's happening on Threads?
It looks like Twitter. There aren't as many people on Threads as there is on Twitter, so you might not get as much engagement. But as Twitter burns down, I think more and more people will switch over to Threads. It doesn't have all of the like tools that Twitter has. So you don't have direct messaging yet. So if you wanted to direct message somebody, you would have to do it on Instagram. There's a thing on Twitter where you can, like, if you just wanted to send a gift to somebody, you can actually there's an icon where you can tap on it and you can search for gifts right directly on Twitter. You don't have to like get off of Twitter and go on the internet and find a gift or whatever. So that's a great advantage that Twitter has that Thread doesn't have. So it's a lot of little tools that's available on Twitter that's not available on Threads. But slowly but surely, Threads is building up all of these features. It's like it's a new feature every couple of weeks. And then
it's also young, right? Like Twitter's been around for ages.
Yeah. It had time to build.
They've got the developers and the bandwidth and all the things. So it'll take time.
And then Blue Sky is even worse because you can't even put videos on Blue Sky yet. So, and then you need to.
I've never even heard of Blue Sky. I'm sorry. Am I dating myself? Because I'm
no. Blue Sky is brand new.
Lady.
What happened was Jack Dorsey, the guy who developed Twitter, he's developing a new social media called Blue Sky, but he's building it much more slowly than Facebook built Threads. So right now they have they have very few people on Threads. I mean, not Threads, but they have very few people on Blue Sky because it's right now it's invitation only. So either you like sign up for their waiting list, or you know somebody that with a lot of followers that has a Thread account that can send you an invite. So that's how it works on Blue Sky. I keep mixing up Blue Sky and Threads, but
it's
you know
okay.
what I'm talking
following
about.
You. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
That's awesome. But it's because there's so many of these things, but you know, they're going to battle it out, and it's going to be like one or two that we really cling to. But I was just wondering if you had that. And then there's what you call, I think the two main ones right now are like Instagram and Twitter. So those are the main ones that I think most of the audiences are probably going to focus on. So
unless they know secret platforms that we don't know about, you guys got to let us know.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think that people are platform burned out now. I know. I think I've dropped one that I had been using. I've dropped Mastodon. I'm not really using that anymore. And then a lot of them had basically failed, so I'm not on those anymore. So, you know, we're just going to see how it shakes out.
Yeah, I'm going to wait it out a little bit. I'm going to wait, and then we'll see what's the survivor, and then maybe I'll get on that.
Right. So let's transition. We're gonna transition over to the opening credits. So, Sunny, why don't you tell us about the movie that we're going to talk about today?
Yes. So when we left our hero, Lieutenant Ellen Ripley, she had laid herself into a sleeping pod for her long voyage home after narrowly escaping a dangerous alien. We now find her 57 years later and rescued by a deep space salvage vessel. Once fully revived, she tries to warn her bosses at Weyland Yutani Corp about the alien threat on the moon called LV-426. Not only does the upper management ignore her, but they've already set up a colony there. After some time passes, the company loses contact with the colonialists and call on Ripley to help. The alien filled her with more terror than she ever had in her life. She can go back out there again? Can she go back out there again? Does she dare face it again?
And yeah, interesting about this, what you just read, the part where she's found in space and they wake her up and all that. I missed all of that the first time I watched the movie. So that whole opening part, I missed all of that. The only part that I remember from is when she wakes up in her bed and she calls the guy and asks him if the company was going to destroy the aliens, and he says yes, and she agrees to go. That's what I remember. I remember the movie starting from there.
Well, when I watched it this time, like wherever I streamed it, it had her waking up like in the bed, and then them telling her, "Hey, it's been 57 years." I'm like, what? Excuse me?
Right.
57 years? Like, oh, you were in a deep space. You were in a hyper sleep or something like that. Just like, what? 57 years? Right. What if you woke up and it's been 57 years? What?
Yeah. So what happened is that in the very beginning of the movie, like before the title, you see a shuttlecraft, and it's like just floating along in space. And inside the shuttlecraft is Ripley. She's in a sleeping pod, so she's kind of in a state of suspended animation. And then you see somebody, you know, they're cutting through the door of her spacecraft, and they go in, and it turns out to be a salvage team. And now they can't salvage her because they can't salvage the spacecraft because she's in the spacecraft. So now everything has to be turned over to the authorities, whoever the authorities are. So because she was in a state of suspended animation, she had been asleep for 57 years. So you didn't see that part when you're viewing?
Mm-mm.
That's
I looked at it. I watched it on YouTube.
Right.
Because everywhere I tried to find it, I had to like pay dollars. So like,
that's
where can I watch this?
That's what I did.
affordably.
I paid dollars for it. But what's interesting is that I didn't know about all of that. There are actually a couple of different versions, so I'm not exactly sure which version you watch. So there's like a theatrical version and there's a slightly extended version. I'm not even sure what version I watched, because in the extended version, they have like a sub story or a subplot with Ellen Ripley having a daughter, and that her daughter had died while she was in suspended animation. And
that was the one I watched.
Oh, okay.
That was the one I watched. Cool. Yes, when she had a daughter. And he's like, yeah, your daughter died at 66 or something, or 68. And then they showed this picture, and this woman was not 66 or 68. She was more like 90. And I think that's kind of how like the perception of age kind of gets off. You know what I'm saying? Like with TV. You're like, oh, that's why they think 50-year-olds are old or 40-year-olds are old, because like these old dudes are playing like 50-year-olds and they're like 80.
Right.
Like, sit down, sir. You're confusing everyone.
It kind of also reminds me of the Golden Girls. I guess you've seen pictures on the Instagram or whatever where they'll show like what the Golden Girls look like, and they're supposed to be like in their 50s, and then what a 50-year-old looks like today, right?
Yeah.
And I think it is a part of that is style, and a part of that is perception. And yeah, that picture did look like real old. So I'm not even sure. I think I need to watch the beginning again to make sure of what part.
That was the one I did watch, that her daughter had passed away, and
right. Because when I was reading the notes, I was like, I don't remember her talking about a daughter. So I guess I watched the theatrical version. I'm not sure, but anyways, moving right along, this movie was released. Oh, in case I forgot to mention, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about Aliens with the S. More than one alien. So Aliens was released July 18th, 1986, produced by 20th Century Fox, Brandywine Productions, and Pinewood Studios. It grossed over $85 million. And to put it in perspective, I'm going to also talk about the amount adjusted for inflation. So $85 million, what it grossed in today's dollars would be $238 million. And that's just in the US and Canada. And then in 1986, it made $131 million worldwide. In today's dollars, that's $367 million. And had a reported budget of $18 million. And in today's dollars, that's $50 million. So that kind of puts it in perspective of they spent $50 million. It grossed worldwide over $367 million in today's dollars. So that shows you that Aliens was a powerhouse. That's why they keep making sequel after sequel. That's why even today they're still making Alien sequels or movies that are related to aliens, because it's a popular franchise, and B, the first two movies made such an incredible amount of profit. And they were such good stories. Had you seen the first movie, Alien?
Yes.
Oh, okay. See, and you were like, nope, no more of this.
And I didn't even, because I was born in 82,
right?
You know, so when these movies were coming out, it definitely wasn't my vibe, obviously. Right. So I had to watch it later on as I was older, and I watched it, and I was like, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm good.
It's kind of like I'm not really into horror movies, so and this is more of my jam because it's sci-fi and it's actiony. And like the first movie was more sci-fi. So when it has a heavy sci-fi element into it, I can watch it better, right? I guess is what I'm trying to say. I'm way more willing to watch it when it's related to sci-fi as opposed to trying to watch something like, I don't know, Freddy Krueger or Saw was the worst one for me. Saw 2. So I was just like you. I saw Saw 2 and I was like, nope. I mean, it was a great movie and all, but I never have to see that again or anything like it. I don't want to. I know that they're good. I take your word for it. I don't have to watch anything like that again because that was horrifying. So moving right along, we're going to talk about who starred in the movie. Why don't you start us off?
So, starring Sigourney Weaver as Lieutenant Ellen Ripley. She was also in WALL-E, Holes, and Galaxy Quest.
Yeah, it's I try to look out for the lesser known movies, but all of her movies, well, most of her movies, if they're not like extremely popular, then they're movies that nobody has heard of. So I wanted to find a middle ground, and it was kind of hard to do that.
She was also in Finding Dory. She was the voice, and she was like, "What was that, Sigourney Weaver? What?" Like she was the voice of the Well, we'll talk about it later. But she was also in Finding Dory.
Okay, that's another one that I hadn't watched yet. Because I watched Finding Nemo. It's not good.
It's kind of sad. No, it's good, but it makes you
sad.
really sad.
Oh, okay.
Because you see how Dory got lost, and she has that
short-term memory
loss, and it's just sad. It's sad.
I need to check that out. Up next is Michael Biehn. I hope that's pronounced the way it's pronounced, because I think I've heard a different pronunciation, but that's what I'm going to right now. Anyway, he played Corporal Dwayne Hicks. He's been in The Terminator, The Abyss, and The Rock. And a lot of other movies, most of them not well known.
And next up we have Carrie Henn, or is it Hahn?
Henn, I think.
It's Henn, as Rebecca Newt Jordan.
And this is pretty much her only movie. Like, she's been in a couple of small things that where she's like a voice or like a short or something like that. But really, this is it. This is her movie. And like after this, and she was like 6 or something, or I can't remember how old, but she was very young, or maybe she was 9. And then she wanted to be a school teacher. And I recently saw an interview of her. She was being interviewed by Kevin Smith, and she talked about how, like, she wanted to be a teacher, and now she's teaching kids, or at least in 2016, her class was a class of children that was her age when she was in Alien. Aliens. Cute. So I thought that was neat. So who's next?
You.
Oh, it is me. God dang it. Yeah, I'm next, and it's Paul Reiser. He played Carter J. Burke. He's also been in Whiplash, Beverly Hills Cop, which you can catch on episode 4 all the way back. It was released all the way back in 2020, episode 4, and The Spy Who Dumped Me. So what's funny about Paul Reiser is that I have no memory of him being in this movie. He's like one of my,
wow.
Like back in the day, like back when this movie came out, he's like one of my favorite comedians. And he's also been on Mad About You, like that long running TV series, Mad About You. And so, yeah, and I watched Mad About You. And the last time I seen Paul Reiser, I know he's in like a couple of shows right now, but the last time I seen him, after not seeing him for a long time, was in The Boys.
The TV show?
Yeah, the Boys TV show. And he was in season, I think he was in the last season, whatever the last season, the one with whatever season Soldier Boy was in. So he was
that was the last season.
Right. And so he was that old man that was supposed to he was supposed to be managing Soldier Boy, or he's supposed to be like a business affiliate or whatever. So I did not recognize him. It's like he was so different, and he acted so different from what I expect him to act.
Because he's aged. Yeah.
Yeah, he's aged, and he's just like a completely different person. Like, he's not the person that you see in this movie. And the person in this movie is not the same person that's in Beverly Hills Cop. Like, he's very good at acting.
He's very versatile. Very versatile. That's why he's an actor.
I wouldn't expect it because he's a comedian. All right.
That's funny.
Now you're up next.
Next up is Lance Hendrickson. He is Science Officer Bishop. You can also find him in Hard Target, The Quick and the Dead, and Powder.
Yeah.
I used to love that movie, Powder. It was so like, hey, this guy's albino, but he was like super albino. Right.
He was like, I guess he had superpowers. I think I watched it. Wasn't there a scene in Powder where he had a bookshelf with a lot of books, and they asked him about the books, and he says, I read all of those books?
Maybe. I just think he was like, let me go outside, because he was very white.
I think he had electrical powers. I don't know. I don't remember. But
something like that.
Yeah.
That was an old movie, but yeah, I did like that movie. I watched it a few times, but I just cannot recall everything.
I don't remember anything from that movie, other than the fact that he had very white skin. I think I need to put that one on the list. So
put it on the list.
Moving right along, we have Bill Paxton. He played Private William Hudson, and he's been in Frailty, Two Guns, and Titanic, and a bunch of other movies. It's like a fun guy to talk about. He seemed like a fun guy.
He does. Next up is William Hope. He plays Lieutenant S. Gorman. He's also in Captain America, The First Avenger, The Whistleblower, and Sherlock Holmes. Yeah,
I don't know too much about William Hope. If you point at him in the lineup, I couldn't tell you who he was. But somebody who's a true chameleon is Janet Goldstein, and she played Private Janet Vasquez. I think I messed that up. Vasquez. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Janet Vasquez. She was in Terminator 2 Judgment Day and Near Dark, and she was in that movie with Bill Paxton and Lance Henriksen. And she's been on a lot of TV shows and a lot of movies. But the funny thing is that you think about Terminator 2, and I say, Janet Goldstein was in Terminator 2. It's like, you're thinking, who was she in Terminator 2? She played the mother. What's his name's mother?
John Connor's his adopted mother, right?
Right.
She turned into it. She got possessed by the 299, right? And
yeah. First she was impaled, and then the T-1000 impersonated her. And
when she was talking about Wolfie, right?
Right.
He said, "How's Wolfie?"
Right.
Yep, your step parents are dead. They're dead.
That was so funny. But here's the thing, though. I would not have put those two together. I would not have guessed that she played both Vasquez and that character in Terminator 2. And that's because she's super good at acting. And the other thing is that she's not actually Hispanic. So those are which
Goldstein, right?
Right. Which is a little bit cringy when you think about it. But I guess
well,
at
maybe
the time,
it's just the name. Maybe it wasn't.
No, she's definitely not Hispanic. I didn't, because I got obsessed with it, and I did some I don't know if you could call it research, but I was looking up to see if she had Hispanic heritage, and she does not. Right? She's all European. But I guess that people back in the 80s, it wasn't as icky as people would find it now. Who's next?
I'm next. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Next up is Al Matthews. He plays Sergeant Alexander Apone. And he's also been in Tomorrow Never Dies and The Fifth Element, one of my favorite movies.
All right, so we got some juicy trivia on Al Matthews. And it doesn't seem like he's been in a whole bunch of movies. And I think this is like his most prominent role was probably this movie. And lastly, we have Mark Rolston. Mark Rolston played Private Mark Drake. He's in The Shawshank Redemption and Hard Rain. So did you see the Shawshank Redemption?
I watched some of it.
Okay.
I don't really like prison movies. I know it's like a good movie. I know. I just have a thing about
I had not
jail movies.
Right. I had not considered jail movies or prison movies a genre, but I guess it is, or a subgenre.
It is a genre. It can be triggering for some people.
Right. So you probably don't remember. And he has a very prominent role in The Shawshank Redemption. And a lot of people remember him from that movie. And he was the guy that was partnered with Janet Vasquez. He was like her partner. They were together for a lot of the action sequences until, they kind of died off one by one. And he's a voice actor. He's done a lot of voices. One of the voices you probably recognize is he's done Lex Luthor on Justice League and some affiliated shows. So he's pretty busy in the animated space.
Nice. Get after it, Mark.
So let's move on. Let's talk about the director.
So this film was directed by James Cameron. None of you guys know who James Cameron? Let me tell you about James Cameron. He has directed Piranha 2, The Spawning, The Terminator. We just talked about The Terminator 2, but he didn't do that one. So sorry, just kidding. The Abyss, True Lies, and Titanic.
Yeah. I was looking at his IMDb, and what I noticed is that these are basically his movies. Like, he's been directing for a long time, but all of his movies can be boiled down to like these franchises. Like, that Titanic and True Lies, they were like one shots, but then they went on to make a True Lies television show. The Abyss is kind of a one shot. The Terminator is a long running franchise. Aliens is a long running franchise. And Piranha 2 was not really his, or just one of his earlier works. But like outside of these movies, it's like, it's it. That's it. It's like these movies.
Well, he did Avatar, right? Didn't he do the
Avatar.
movies?
Oh, I didn't write that down. I wrote the, but yeah, and the Avatar movies. I meant to write the Avatar down in these notes. But outside of all of these franchises, that's pretty much it. And probably because he tends to write his own movies. So this movie, for example, was written by him and also David Gaylor and Walter Hill. So Cameron himself, he also wrote Strange Days, which is interestingly enough, not a movie that he directed. He also wrote the screenplay for Alita: Battle Angel and the screenplay for Rambo: First Blood Part 2. And that's also a previous episode, and I don't remember that I don't know if I remember that he wrote it. Go back and find
it, y'all. Go find it.
No, that, and I don't remember that he wrote the screenplay for Rambo: First Blood Part 2. And
I didn't know he was a writer. Like, I just thought he was a director. Like, you hear James Cameron and you're like, oh yeah, he's like this amazing director. I didn't know he wrote as well. And that's the thing with Hollywood. It's like, hey, if you want to get your movie in front of somewhere, you got to write it, you got to direct it, and you've got to produce it yourself. Yeah,
there are a lot of directors that, a lot of directors are kind of like hired guns. Like directors are very important for crafting the story. And so you have some directors that stick closely with the script that they're given when they're hired to direct. And then you have some directors that, I don't want to say they go off on a tangent, but they're very loose with the script. You have very different personalities. And then you have some directors like James Cameron that they like to write their own stories and then direct their own stories. So that's the type of director he is. And you have like a number of directors like that. I think Christopher Nolan is like that. He likes to write his movies and direct them. And we happen to be very good at it. But I think the reason is that because directors are very important to crafting the stories that they're directing. So we also have Gaylor, and he's written The Money Pit, Fun with Dick and Jane, and Undisputed. And lastly, we have, and when I said, regarding Fun with Dick and Jane, I think there are two versions. I think he wrote the original version. I should have done
not the Jim Carrey one.
Yeah, not the Jim. I think the Jim Carrey one is based on the original version that he wrote. And then 48 Hours, we covered in episode 29, was written by Walter Hill. And he also wrote Streets of Fire and the screenplay for The Warriors, which is apparently a very popular movie that I have not seen or seen pieces of, right?
I haven't seen it, but I feel like it's like Warriors.
Yeah.
Come out and play.
Right. Everybody knows that part. And I guess
never seen it.
Never seen it. Perhaps in order to participate in the zeitgeist, I should probably go and check that one out. So tell us about the music.
So the music is by James Horner. He also did music for 173 he has 173 composer credits to his name. That The Magnificent Seven, the 2016 version, Southpaw, The Amazing Spider-Man, Apocalypto, and The Legend of Zorro.
Yeah. I could have gone on, and he has a lot of amazing music and some very popular movies. So he's good at his work. I'm pretty sure he wrote one of the Star Trek themes. I know I've typed his credit a bunch of times on these notes. So that's it for the opening credits. And if you're enjoying the show, remember that you can get t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, face masks, jerseys, and more at our website, backlickcinema.com/shop. You can tell I'm reading from a script because people aren't really wearing face masks as much anymore. Like every once in a while, you run across something at like the dollar store who's got their face mask on and then wearing it incorrectly because they're wearing their face mask under their nose. It's like you're defeating the purpose of the mask.
You're doing it wrong.
You're doing it wrong. And I find that enormously and forever amusing. So now that we've talked about the opening credits, we're going to transition to our favorite parts. All right, Brandy, why don't you start it? I know, not Brandy. You're Sunny. You're Sunny. My bad.
Now I'm leaving.
Your names are so similar. It's easy for me to mess up.
Fine. I have it written on the screen. What are you talking about? It's fine.
You do have it written on the screen, and I am a moron, but
it's fine.
It's something that I excel at. I'm gonna edit the mistake out and pretend that cool. I never called you the wrong name.
All right, we won't talk about it again. So, favorite parts?
Yeah.
Honestly, my favorite part was for me, I was shocked when I found out that it's been 57 years and she looks good. And then like her kid is all dead. It's kind of sad. Like that kind of stuck with me because I was like, we're watching it years later, like almost 40 years. Is it 40 years? Not 40 years yet, but almost 40 years later. And just how they were trying to pawn off her daughter as a 60-year-old woman who had passed away, that obituary photo. I was like, stop it right now. Like, who's doing this? We need to go ahead and fix this. Let's put in a new picture here. But yeah, kind of like the beginning part where she kind of figures out where she is and she feels like, hey, everything's cool. And then all the shenanigans unravel. I'm going to say that was my favorite part thus far.
Did you have any other ones?
I can't give you any right
All right, so let's go over a couple more.
Tell us your favorite parts, though. Tell us your favorite.
Yeah. Let me get. Yeah, you covered a very significant, impactful part where it was like 57 years later, and that sultry voice that she has. I made a note that this spaceship, one of the spaceships, looked like a battleship from Babylon 5. And, so, did you see the part with the knife trick?
With a knife trick,
because that's one of the most impactful scenes to me.
Tell us about it. Tell me about it.
So the knife trick is that. So you have on the ship. There's an android. His name is Bishop. So Bishop, that's the one played by Lance Henriksen. So they're calling on. They're on the spaceship. They're just talking and waking up after they've been sleeping and just getting around for dinner and, laughing and joking and whatnot. And it's like, Bishop, come over here. Let's do the thing with the knife. Do the knife trick. So what happens is that Bishop splays his hands in front of him and he takes out a knife, but then he grabs, what's his name? Hicks. Is it Hicks? I think it's Hicks. Hold on. Let me look up the name. It's the Bill Paxton character. Hudson. Right. So he grabs Hudson and he lays Hudson's hand on top of his hand. No, he puts his hand on top of Hudson's hand so Hudson can't move. And it's splayed like hit with the finger splayed out like that. Like I'm showing you now. Audience, I'm showing my hand with my finger splayed out so that honey knows.
What are the 5 fingers say to the face?
So that Sunni knows what I'm talking about. So and then he takes a knife and he starts jabbing the knife in between the fingers. And then he starts going faster and faster. Hudson is freaking out because if the android misses, then it's going to slice into both of their fingers, and that's not going to feel good. And the android goes faster and faster, jabbing a knife between the fingers and, you know, and everybody's laughing and joking and whatnot. And then, you know, the android stops and the trick is over. So the trick is stabbing the spaces in between the fingers without stabbing the finger. And this is something that was so impactful because after seeing that part, as a little kid, I would take a sharp object, not a knife, but a sharp object, and I would jam it in between my fingers.
I feel like everybody did that as a kid, and that's probably where it came from. I would use like a pencil and use the eraser side of the pencil.
Yeah, there you go.
The eraser side of the pencil, and every time I would nick my finger. So I was like,
yeah, that's not a game. I'm not going to play that game with an actual sharp object, at least not as sharp as a knife.
No.
That was one of my favorite parts because it basically it's the kind of thing that kind of sticks with me throughout my entire life.
I think that's what everybody started doing that. Like, I don't remember where I learned that trick from.
Right.
Or why to do that, but I would like, you know,
Right. I love Newt as a character. That was the little girl that they found at the base. Mm-hmm. So Newt was, and I think that's why they added the, I guess, subplot with Ripley having a daughter and then her daughter having passed away. And she basically never knowing her daughter after she left to go and hunt aliens or go on that salvage mission.
Because her goal was not to hunt aliens.
Her goal was, to go on a salvage mission and come back.
To hunt aliens. That was not the goal.
Right. Like in the first movie, she's supposed to go on a salvage mission and come back and raise her daughter, but that didn't happen. So she basically missed her daughter's entire life. So they find this little girl on the planet or the moon or whatever, and it's like a surrogate daughter. So that's what kind of made that relationship with her and Newt impactful. And it's like in the beginning, Newt, it was hard to communicate with Newt. Like first they had to capture her and then they had to communicate her. It was really hard because she has severe PTSD and she basically watched everyone that she ever grew up with get murdered by a monster. So you can.
I wouldn't talk to anybody either. I would just like, nope, I'm not making no new friends.
Right.
No new friends.
Right.
You guys are going to get it. I don't.
Right. But Ripley helped open her up and she's able to communicate a little bit. And that was, and it was basically her and Newt and her relationship with Ripley, which was really nice. And then, let's see, what was the other part that I had? I had made some notes too. Like, one of the things that kind of freaked Ripley out when she first met the android was that she didn't know that he was an android. Like she thought it was a regular dude. And then when he nicked himself, he had that white stuff come out of his fingers. So that's when she knew that he was an android. And she was like, you didn't tell me you was bringing an android, because in the previous movie, the last time she had any interaction with an android, that android tried to kill her. Like first the android took over the mission. It usurped her authority, and then it tried to kill her and release the alien. It's doing a bunch of stuff. So she did not.
I had a bad experience with androids. You need to tell me when there's androids around here.
Right. So now it's 57 years later, and the Marines had to tell her that it's like standard procedure to have an android with the mission. And she's like, okay, well, just keep them away from me. Because she does not trust androids. So, but like the android was basically trying to assure her that he was safe. Because he was like, well, yeah, the model that you dealt with was always kind of twitchy, but I have to abide by.
I'm good though. Don't worry.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Well, he's programmed with a couple of laws. The first law is that he can't harm a human being, and he can't, through inaction, allow a human being to be harmed. And if anybody likes literature and hard FS in particular, they'll recognize those as the two of the three laws of robotics that were developed by Isaac Asimov. So Isaac Asimov was the author. He wrote a lot of fantastic science fiction stories. And whenever he wrote about robots, his robots were supposed to abide by three laws. And those are two of them. And then the last one was that a robot must protect itself unless it conflicts with the first and second law. So it has to protect itself unless a person tells it not to, or unless protecting itself allows a person to be killed. So, I found that to be fascinating. It's like whenever you're watching new science fiction, they always kind of throw Asim off a bone by throwing those laws in there. There was also there was a point in the movie where like the Marines go in and they're in a kind of refinery on the planet, and they have all their weapons locked and loaded, and then the lieutenant, he's like back on the ship or whatever, and he has to tell them not to fire the weapons. He tells the sergeant collect all of their magazines, make sure nobody fires their weapons, and it's because they're in a refinery, and if they shoot their weapons, it could make the place like blow up like a nuclear explosion. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe do some recon. Maybe do some recon before you send your
Do a little research before you send in people doing all that. Maybe you should have figured this out before they got here.
Yeah, maybe do a little research before you send your team into a danger. I mean, because they're hunting aliens. They know that the aliens are there. They know that the aliens are dangerous. So they have to make a knife fight,
right? Do they have to like take their knives out instead of like shooting weapons?
They had to switch to like the flamethrowers, and one guy had a shotgun, which didn't have the type of rounds that would cause like a nuclear explosion, because the regular rounds were like exploding rounds. And the guy had a shotgun, had a regular round that's not going to penetrate like the reactor or whatever. But that was all they had. But two of them, Vasquez and Burke, not Burke, Vasquez and Drake, they hid their magazines.
Weapons?
Well, they had the weapons, but they hid their magazines. They didn't give up their magazines to the sergeant. So when the aliens
giving up my guns.
So when the aliens showed up, they locked and loaded and started shooting and at the aliens. And the way the aliens came out was like totally awesome, because it's like they're looking around and they have this monitor where they're looking for the aliens through a motion detector, and it was like, oh my God, the aliens are right on top of us. And they're looking around. It's like, I don't see any aliens. They're right here. There's movement. There's right here. And then the camera pan around and you can see the wall, and the wall starts to move. And then the aliens blend in so well that they blend in to the walls, and they just come out and they start attacking. So all of that is awesome. And then they have the firefight. The firefights in the movie were great. That's what makes it actiony. Just a lot of it's great. It's all. That's what you want in your 80s movies, right?
Yeah, you
do. And then, so one of my favorite parts was the knife trick. The other favorite part was Newt. And my last favorite part was the climax of the movie. So in the middle of the movie, they show this loader. So it's basically, it's kind of like a forklift, except you wear it like an Iron Man armor. So the arms are like the forklift part, and you walk around on these heavy duty legs. So, and it's called a heavy lifter. So basically, I guess the advantage of walking around rather than using a forklift that you have to drive around is that it's easier to get around obstacles or whatever. And so she's trained in using this heavy lifter. So at the end of the movie, they're threatened by this alien queen. They actually find the alien queen, because in the first movie, you remember they ran into these eggs. So in the second movie, they asked the question, well, who's laying all these eggs?
Where's these eggs coming from? And someone's laying eggs.
Right. And at the end of the movie, when Ripley has to, Newt gets kidnapped and by an alien, which is kind of a funny thing, because normally aliens just attack. But what they found is that they don't always attack. A lot of times they just kidnap people. And so they had kidnapped Newt. And basically, they put her up against the wall. They slimed her against the wall in an egg chamber. And the idea is that when the eggs hatch, the face hugger would attach to her face and impregnate her. And then the alien would come bursting out of her body, and you get new aliens. So it's actually, it's actually way more systematic in the second movie than in the first movie. In the first movie, they just so happen upon an egg chamber, and it just so happened that a face hugger comes out. But I guess the preferred method for the alien is to kidnap a bunch of other beings and then and then trapped them in the egg chamber. And I guess
so they could hatch their babies.
Right. And I guess in the first instance, they didn't have any beings. They didn't have anybody they could kidnap. But now some people just came along. First, it was a colonist that came along. And like when they were looking for the colonists, they were all strapped up against the wall in the egg chamber. They tried to rescue one of the colonists because she was still alive. But then an alien burst out of her gut. And then the aliens came out of the walls and they had to fight their way out. So...
Well, they did have 57 years to figure out the right way to start reproducing. So they're like, yeah, we have to smash these people.
Right.
Cut them up. Let's go. This is more efficient this way.
I think the aliens have always done that. It's just that this is the first time that a bunch of people showed up where they could just put them in the egg chamber, right? Because they didn't have that resource before.
That recon. Y'all need to do your recon. Do research. And
then what you call it? So she's in this lifting thing, right? She already rescued Newt, and she's trying to get Newt back up to the spaceship. And what's funny is that this ending is a lot like the ending of the first movie. So in the first movie, she wanted to blow up the main ship, the Nostromo, and escape in the shuttle. She sets off the ship's self-destruction, and she has 15 minutes to get off the ship. And then at the same time, try to avoid this alien. And then she gets on the shuttle. The alien happens to get on the shuttle. So she has to, fight the alien off the shuttle. And then the main ship that she was on blows up or something like that. And then in this ending was kind of a similar ending where she sets off a countdown. It's the same 15-minute countdown. And then she has to fight off the alien queen and all of her alien minions to get to a lift to get out of the building that they are in. They're in a building with the reactor. And then she has to get on her spaceship, and it's like a drop ship, and then get to the main spacecraft, which is in orbit, which is a lot of work with just her and the robot and Newt. And then I think Hicks, those are the only ones left, and they make it up to the spaceship. And then the alien queen had hitched a ride, and now she has to fight the alien queen, and the robot got cut in half, so can't count on his help anymore. Now, and then, so while the little girl is hiding and trying to get away from the alien queen, she runs and she finds her lifter thing. She puts that suit on and then has a fight with the alien and with the lifter, and then she's able to end the fight, and then the refinery blows up, and it's all fun. It's all fun. It has everything you want in your 80s action movie. And I like the way they had built the tension up to that moment. So I think that it was just a clever way of building up that tension and then having that huge climax at the end, even though it's the same ending structurally. That's how
you keep that franchise going.
Right.
That's how you leave an opportunity for part 3.
Right. It's basically the same ending, but but he was able to, it's like Cameron was able to put his own twist on it, right?
Don't worry, guys, I got this.
Right.
Jimmy to the rescue. I got this.
Right.
No problem.
That's great. And then all the backstories to build up, the relationships that they built, and that she wasn't the final girl. So she survived, the little girl survived, Hicks survived, although he was beaten pretty badly. He managed to survive. So it was just great the way this movie was put together. And it's just one of the greatest movies of the 80s.
Okay.
So I know that you didn't get to see all of it, but re-encourage you.
I'll finish watching it. Yeah. I did. My kids distracted me. They were like, oh, we want to watch this. And it's like, well, so what? Get out of here. Cook us dinner. What? Okay, fine.
Yeah, I know that when they're hungry.
And then you forget, like me, I have 1,000 things on my mind or to do or something. So it's like, okay, I'm doing this. And then I stop doing it and then I do 1,000 other things. And I was like, what was I doing?
Right,
I was supposed to do something.
I know. I get it too.
I'm sorry.
So, that's it for our favorite parts. And now we want to transition to what I'm going to call it this. I'm going to call it the Trivia Top 10. That's what we're going with. I found 10 of the most interesting things I found about this movie.
Okay.
So
the first.
Yeah, go ahead. No, just why don't you start us off? But you already started.
The first item is, like most films, the movie wasn't shot in sequence. But for added realism, James Cameron filmed the scene where we first meet the colonel, the Colonial Marines, one of the earliest scenes last. This was so that the camaraderie of the Marines was realistic, because the actors had spent months filming together.
Yes, and that's brilliant. It's a trick that a lot of directors use, and I thought that was brilliant on his part. So the Marines, the actors, they're a lot of times what the directors do is that either they'll get the actors to hang out together for a little while before they start shooting, or what James Cameron did was that
bond.
He waited to the end of the movie to film that moment so that they would have a natural bond. And then sometimes they'll do the opposite, or the actors themselves will do the opposite. Like sometimes the actors will separate, like if it's a hero and a villain, or a protagonist and antagonist, they'll separate from each other so they're not too familiar with each other. So they're not building up any chemistry between each other. So that
I don't like you. You're the enemy.
Not necessarily that not liking each other, but just not being familiar with each other.
Yeah.
So that if they have any chemistry between them, it's not captured like on screen or something like that. So and sometimes, like I said, sometimes the director would do it, and sometimes the actor would do it themselves, and sometimes the actor would go all method and be all weird when they'll be weird on the set, so nobody wants to deal with them. So that's a brilliant thing that Cameron did. So the next thing is, when filming the scene with Newt in the duct, Carrie Henn kept deliberately blowing her scene so that she could slide down the vent, which she later called a slide that was 3 stories tall. James Cameron finally dissuaded her by saying that if she completed the shot, she could play with it as much as she wanted, and she did, and he kept his promise. So that's how
kids are. They just want to play. They just want to have a good time.
Right. Yeah. There's a scene in the movie where it's like she has to go through the shoot. She's in a duct work, but then part of the duct goes down like a slide. So she's supposed to say her lines and slide down the slide, but she kept messing it up on purpose. Oh, I love kids. All right.
The next one, Bill Paxton continuously apologized to Carrie Henn throughout the film every time Hudson had to swear in front of her. Carrie later admitted that she didn't mind, mainly because she really didn't know what any of the words meant.
Right. Oh, you grew up with such innocence. And now I feel like kids know right away what all of the words meant.
My daughter is like, "What did you say?" Like, I'm in trouble. I have to watch my mouth.
Right. Yeah, we grew up in a household where everybody mainly my father cursed. So we all knew those words.
Exactly.
We just knew we weren't supposed to say them. So moving along, in both the standard and the special edition versions, the 15-minute countdown at the end of the film is indeed 15 minutes. So I had alluded to that earlier.
Nice. Lance Hendrickson caught a dose of food poisoning from the milk and yogurt combination that he had to spew up when his chest was pierced by the alien queen's tail. Having this lactose combination sitting around under hot studio lights created a bacterial breeding ground. It started to smell so bad after 3 days of filming that most crew members got hesitant to go near Hendrickson, who reportedly endured the smell and never complained even once. In contrast, the crew of the first Alien film opted to not use the milk for Ash's death scene, where he also spews the milky substance out of his mouth, as they recognized the fluid made of milk would go sour under hot lights. I'm like, I can't do this. Y'all need to get me something else. No.
It's so weird that it works in reverse. Usually what happens is that you learn a lesson and then you try to avoid doing that thing from which you learned the lesson. But in this case, they was like, let's just use milk. Okay. It's like, why would you think that? Why would you think that? Why didn't you take the notes from the people who made the first Alien movie? This is why when you watch Double Dare, they never used milk. They used a milk-like substance. And I feel like that's what he should have did. He should have used, I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know why they didn't take the notes from the first Alien. It's just so weird that they were
probably like, oh, it was more expensive for the milk-like substance. We've got milk and yogurt right here. Like, they won't even know. That's why they have contracts and, like, what are those things called? Unions.
Yeah.
So this type of stuff doesn't happen again.
I guess. It's kind of weird to me. So up next, Al Matthews, who played Sergeant Apone, spent 6 years in the United States Marine Corps. He held 13 combat awards and decorations, including 2 Purple Hearts. He was the first Black Marine in the 1st Marine Division in Vietnam to be meritoriously promoted to the rank of sergeant. He served with Kilo Battery, 4th Battalion, 11th Marines, 1st Marine Division. So he's legit.
Sir, yes, sir.
Yeah, yes. Right.
Get some.
There were 2 Black people in the movie. He was the Black sergeant that was in charge of that group. And then, he was in charge of the men out in the field. And then you had a lieutenant that was in charge of the entire mission. The only thing that kind of bugged me like real bad in this movie was like, and in modern times, the way that soldiers or Marines or the combatants work now, it's like when the group goes out into the field, everybody's wearing their armor and their helmets and everybody's armed with rifles. Like, everybody's wearing the same uniform. But in this movie, you had the Marines, the ones that went out on the field, they wore their armor and they had their rifles. But the lieutenant stayed behind in just like his regular clothes, like his regular dress clothes or his combat clothes, but not his armor. Yeah, his regular fatigues. And I was like, that is so wrong. Why? There is a possibility that you're going to have to go out there. Like, you might not be able to stay behind in the spaceship. You might have to join them. So why wouldn't you be dressed up in your armor and your helmet? And why wouldn't you have a rifle? Like, all of this is wrong, right? That's the only thing that kind of bugged me.
So Zoe does not approve. Okay, get it together next time.
Yeah. I'm throwing shade on that. So what's next?
Next, all the actors playing Marines, except for Michael Biehn and William Hope, used their real first names for their characters.
Right. So officially, they really didn't have first names, but I added the first names to mainly the Marine characters. I added the first names.
It's probably in the credits. Like, even though like on film, they're like, Sergeant, Lieutenant, Private.
Right.
On screen with the credits, they probably actually had their first names there.
I wasn't actually paying attention to the credits, but when you look up on IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes also, Rotten Tomatoes tend to have like more of their official names than IMDb does. So on Rotten Tomatoes, it had their first initial, but on IMDb, it just has their last name. So from that, I was able to put together, if they have the first initial, then they really did use their real first names in order to fill out the character. Like, for example, Bill Paxton on Rotten Tomatoes, his character is listed as Private W. Hudson. And I was like, it must be William Hudson. So I thought that's kind of cute that they're able to name their characters.
Mm-hmm.
So let me find out where I was because I moved. This must be where it talks about Hudson. Mm-hmm. Hudson teases Vaquet. I'm messing up his name.
Vasquez.
Thank you. I took Spanish back in high school.
We have a town over and it's called Vasquez Rocks, called like Vasquez.
Oh, okay. See,
and so like it's a popular name in California, Vasquez. So.
I'll learn it in a minute. Hudson teases Vasquez by saying, when they said alien, she thought they said illegal alien and signed up. Vasquez actress Janet Goldstein actually did make that mistake. She showed up to the auditions dressed up as a migrant worker. It gets cringier and cringier.
Awkward!
Yeah, super awkward.
Yes. Next, many businesses wanted to buy power loaders as forklifts. Sadly, none were to be bought since it's a combination of a stuntman sitting in a loader behind Ripley, moving the limbs, wires holding it up, and some miniatures work.
Right. So,
can we buy one of those?
I think this is a testament to how realistic the loaders looked and how great the special effects were at the time. So, I mean, the special effects from pretty much all of this movie still hold up. It's like there's maybe some of the spaceship scenes aren't fantastic, but most of the time it just looks incredible.
I will pay the dollars. I will pay the dollars to watch it, like on the full screen. Like I'm on the full screen. I'll go to Amazon and watch it there.
A brilliant decision. Or what I've been told is that sometimes you can just borrow it from the library. I was like, oh, I gotta find my library membership. I hadn't thought about borrowing it from the library.
I did not think about that.
I had not thought about that. Yeah. So finally, the famous knife trick scene was real. James Cameron claimed that what we see in the final cut is Lance Henriksen actual speed. In another interview, Henriksen backs up Cameron's claim, saying, "What you see on the film is pretty much all me. They sped up one of the long shots we used towards the end of the scene, but that was it. It was good fun. The scene was shot in 2 takes. The first take went flawlessly. The second take, Henriksen nicked Bill Paxton without breaking the skin, resulting in a bloody blister." So yeah, it was. They did it for real, and somebody actually got hurt.
Call my union rep.
So that's all I wrote down. But so in the source where I got it from, Henriksen also says that, like, he's claiming that Paxton kind of moved his finger a little bit and it got in the way, and he nicked it that way. It's like, come on, Lance. You know you messed up. So that's it for the trivia. We're gonna move along to see what the critics thought. So the critics gave it on Rotten Tomatoes 98%, and the audience gave it a 94%. On IMDb reviews, it has an 8.4 out of 10, which is super high for
That's
IMDb.
not bad.
Yeah, super. And then having it at 98% on Rotten Tomatoes made it very difficult to find a negative review. I try to mix it up with negative and positive reviews, but in this instance, I could only find one negative review, and I was too lazy to search the web to find other negative reviews.
There's none. It's because there are none. That's why.
Well, I think what happens is that when you get a film that's this popular and someone gives it a negative review, it sometimes feel like they're just writing something negative in order to say something negative, right? They want to be contrary, and it sounds inauthentic. Like, it's one thing to be somebody, like, if you like science fiction films, then you should review science fiction films. So if you like sci-fi and you watch this movie, you're probably going to like it. But if you're somebody who likes romance and you come and watch this movie, there's no romance in this movie, so you're not going to like it. So somebody like that might give it a negative review. And I see that a lot of times. It feels disingenuous. Like, why are you reviewing this movie if you don't even like the genres of horror or sci-fi? You know, it doesn't make good sense. It's like the editor said, I want you to go review this movie. And they're like, but I don't like sci-fi. It was like, well, I don't have anybody else, so I need you to go and review this movie.
Do it anyway.
That's what it seems like sometimes. So let's get started.
So we've got Melanie McFarland from Salon.com. She says, beyond dispute, is the film's timeless worth as cathartic work, especially in terms of its accidentally commentary on the sexism of the corporate structure?
Yeah, which kind of makes sense. And that's like in the beginning of the film where she's trying to tell him about the aliens and they're all brushing her off.
That was Reiser. That was Paul Reiser, who was the guy. Like, he was the corporate guy.
Yeah, that and everybody else in the boardroom. Like, they didn't want to believe that she had faced it. Or
sure, Jan. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Well, not like because she had no evidence or anything, so they didn't want to just take her word for it, right? So I think and part of that is because of the sexism. And it's funny, right? Because what this reviewer is suggesting is that James Cameron probably didn't know that's what he was saying when he wrote the scene, but maybe he did.
Maybe he was super woke.
Yeah, maybe he was super woke.
In the 80s, yeah, right.
Right. Well, when you look at it, you have Ripley, who's a very important character. And then when you're looking at The Abyss, you have another strong female character. And then in Terminator, he has Sarah Connor, who is also a very strong female character.
She's a badass.
I think that he's kind of aware. I'm going to give him a benefit of a doubt because many of his movies they have, and even in Avatar, you have several strong female characters. So I can give him a benefit of a doubt.
And Sigourney Weaver is in Avatar.
Right, and she's in Avatar.
Full circle. There it is. That's it. Let's shut it down. We're done. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, I'll give it to you. I'll give it to James Cameron. Next up, I have Gene Siskel from the Chicago Tribune. And Gene says, count me out of the fan club for this one. So I'm guessing Gene is not a fan.
Right. He's not a fan. He's the one negative review that I found on Rotten Tomatoes, which is kind of weird because I would expect Gene Siskel to like this movie. He likes a lot of weird movies, or he likes a lot of movies that I would not have expected him to like. So he's I feel like he's more willing to watch like science fiction, horror, thrillers and stuff like that. So I feel like he's more with it. You know what I mean?
Not for this one.
And the fact that he didn't like this one is kind of wild. And he's kind of self-aware. That's why he says, count me out of the fan club. He knows that he's putting out a very unpopular opinion. And I think he has an understanding why so many other people like it and why he just didn't. So that is kind of weird. I thought that was strange. So up next is Alex Sando from Juicy Cerebellum. They wrote, other than being overlong, this film is damn near perfect. You know, and I don't even really see it as overlong. That's kind of a weird statement, right? I think it's like 2 hours though. So maybe for that time, like for the 80s, it seemed maybe that was too long.
90 minutes is the sweet spot.
That is the sweet spot.
2 hours?
I agree. It seems like a lot of movies are 2 hours plus nowadays. It's like, you know, filmmakers want to get their story in, so they want to put everything in.
You see Casino? You know how long that movie is?
No, I had not seen it.
Casino's damn near 4 hours long. Oh my gosh. It's like one of the longest movies ever.
I think the problem is that if you feel the time, then your movie is too long. It has to be a movie where you don't know how long it is. Like I saw Ant-Man and the Wasp. I think it was like maybe an hour and 20 minutes or something like that. I can't remember, but I don't feel it. I don't feel the time. It feels like the movie is just moving right along. But then again, at the same time, I'm one of the few people who really enjoyed that movie. There are a lot of people that had a lot of problems with it. I had no problems.
I watched it. I like Ant-Man.
Yeah. So, and what I'm thinking about specifically is Quantumania. And
I think the thing was with Quantumania is the special effects.
Yeah.
The special effects were lacking.
Yeah. They were definitely
in a lot of spaces. It was kind of lacking. And I think that's what people were like uppity about.
People were uppity about the special effects, and then a lot of people had trouble with the story. The people who are more familiar with the villain were upset that he was defeated by Ant-Man. So like they didn't like the entire premise of the movie. But what happened is that to me, the story was good enough to overcome the bad special effects. And I'm thinking maybe they'll fix it later. Like maybe there'll be a special edition where all the special effects is fixed.
They still do that. Yeah, like, I mean, I know we're talking about aliens, but about Quantumania, when the mom's like, oh no, we've done what? And then like, hey, there's a world down here and all this stuff is going on. You're just like, what? Yeah. Excuse me? I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really did too. So, I don't know about. I guess, like I said, back in the day, it felt long, but and to reiterate, nowadays, all the movies are long. Martin Scorsese just came out with a movie called Under the Flower Moon or something like that. I can't remember the exact title, but it's plus 3 hours long. And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to miss that movie.
What did I watch? The other Avatar movie, the second Avatar.
Yeah.
I had to take breaks in that one. Because they were just doing so much world building and all this stuff, and I was just like, "Why is this movie so long?"
Right,
but
right.
It was okay.
Right. So lastly, we have Sheila Vincent. She's from the Los Angeles Times. She said, "It's blaster action, not gothic future horror. Fortunately, director-screenwriter James Cameron has shaped his film around the defiant intelligence and sensual athleticism of Weaver, and that's where Aliens works best." And I agree. There's actually a scene, it's another good scene, that they talk about in I think I've seen I used to watch Entertainment Tonight a lot. So, and I think they did a short snippet or interview. Yeah. They did a short snippet or interview where they were talking about, there's a specific scene where Ripley, Sigourney Weaver, she has, she's getting all of these guns and weapons so that she can go rescue Newt from the alien queen. So she gets this flamethrower. She takes the flamethrower and she straps it. She tapes it together with the rifle, and then she's getting grenades, and she's hooking herself up to harnesses. She's getting all this stuff, and it kind of looks like Rambo, the way Rambo gets ready when he's getting ready to go into to fight. He's getting his guns ready. He's getting his magazines. He's taking his bandana. He's wrapping the bandana around his head, and just he's getting his knife and putting his knife in there, and then he's tying his shoes. He's doing all of that. So people kind of compare that scene to Sigourney Weaver getting ready, and people are shouting, "Ramboa, Ramboa!"
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
So yeah, that's a trip. And she's fantastic in this movie. She's they really chose the right person when they chose Sigourney Weaver to play Ripley. So yeah, do you have any final thoughts on Aliens?
Okay, I told you wasn't a big Aliens fan, but just I'm gonna watch it now, the whole thing. I'm gonna finish it. I'm sorry I came in not fully in, but now I'm fully in. I want to just go in and just watch it. I want all the feels. I want them all. So yeah,
well,
I'm in. You
Sunny,
convinced me.
No worries. I'm just glad you came over to chat.
I'm here.
I appreciate you. Because talking to myself, it could be kind of hard sometimes. So glad to have you over as a guest, and that you is able to carve out the time out of your busy schedule. I know you've got a lot of things going on, and it's incredible what you're able to accomplish in the short amount of time that we all have. It's just you're an inspiration to people everywhere, that if you need to or you want to accomplish something in your life, you just got to carve out time to get it done.
Thank you. Yeah, I was if Beyonce can do it, I can do it too. We got the same 24 hours. Let's go.
Right, absolutely. So finally, Aliens is, as of this recording, available wherever you can find streaming. Perhaps you can find it at your local library. That's it for today. The week after next, I'll be back with the sequel, Alien 3, which I must admit, the conceit of this program is it is my favorite movies, but Alien 3 was not one of my favorite movies. It's kind of a hiccup in my watching of the original Alien films. But I need to go and re-examine it. I want to re-explore it. And there's a specific reason that I didn't like Alien 3. And it's kind of a spoiler, so I won't mention it here. I'll spoil it when I talk about Alien 3 when we get back in a couple of weeks. But yeah, but I think that if I can get that specific part that I had a problem with, then maybe I'll find some joy in it. And one of the reasons I want to watch it again is because it has one of my favorite actors, Charles S. Dutton. And it's just that how can I not like a movie with Charles S. Dutton? So I need to go and re-examine this film. And joining me is a great friend of the podcast, John T. Bowles, from the great podcast, Open Pike Night. Follow us on Twitter, TikTok, or Blue Sky at Backlick Cinema, or on Facebook, Instagram, or Threads at Backlick Cinema Podcast. Don't forget that you can contact us with any questions, comments, or suggestions at fanmail@backlickcinema.com. And Sunni Hepburn, do you have any additional plugs?
Yes, thank you for having me here, Zoe. If you would like to, you could follow my podcast at Book of Lies Pod on Twitter or X, Book of Lies Podcast on Facebook or Instagram. You can visit our website, Book of Lies Podcast. If you want to follow my real estate journey, you could follow me at therealtor.sunnyhepburn on Instagram. I make reels. Yay.
All right. So I'll make sure I have all of those links in the show notes. And one last time, if you like this show, then please help us grow by spreading the word about Backlick Cinema, the podcast. And I know you've enjoyed our guest, Sunni, so please listen to Book of Lies, the podcast. Believe me, it matters. I've been Zoe Richardson. Be safe. Share a movie from yesteryear with your family. Hug your loved ones. And if you're going to be anything, be outstanding.